every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. This is the gospel of Christ. Praise to God.
May the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Today's gospel is the vine and the branches, and I looked up what the lectionary reading was for next year just to see where the fruit of the Spirit would be. And that passage we actually don't get till next year, but I included it in this one just because I also wanted to talk about having fruits that come with being connected with the vine and the branches. I once preached a sermon on a phrase that you may have heard originally came from St. Augustine: love God and do what you want. Okay, it's an intriguing idea if you really think about it. Can you disobey if you truly love God? Can you keep sinning if you truly love God? Can you hate and fight with your neighbor if you truly love God? And on and on and on. I mean, imagine a life filled with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. All of it naturally coming out of you simply because you're connected to the vine. It's the life you've always wanted, your best possible life, as Oprah might say. And the source of that life is constant, moment-by-moment connection to God. Have you ever noticed in life that in some moments, those moments last longer than others? And some go just so fast, no matter how much you try and slow them down. Whenever there's a Father's Day in my life or a birthday with my family, my kids' gift usually to me is that they'll give me a musical 1-hour concert. We sit around and they play the guitar, sing popular songs, sing songs that they wrote themselves. Some will play the piano. And it is better than any hard, concrete gift that they might buy for me from a store. And I try and take it all in. I mean, I try and slow down time because it only happens twice in my year. And I just think, I want to capture everything in this moment. And far too often, our moments are God moments, and we let them slip by. Because of the rest of our lives are just too noisy and so full of distractions. God says hello, and we just walk on by. We don't even notice. It might truly be said of our lives that we become experts at ignoring God. So my hope today is that we will begin to see the moments of our lives for what they really are. To see in each moment the potential for adventure and significance and joy that's locked up and hidden in each one. To see God in every moment and his invitation for us to join him in that moment. There was a man named Frank Laubach back in 1930. He started an experiment that he would do for the next 40 years of his life, and it dramatically changed his life. The Encyclopedia Britannica describes him as perhaps the single greatest educator of modern times. Within a few years of that day in 1930, he developed the Each One, Teach One literacy program, which has been used by over 60 million people worldwide to teach them how to read. He wrote over 50 books, traveled to over 100 countries, and was even honored on a U.S. postage stamp in 1984. He became an international spokesperson, outspoken about matters of poverty, injustice, and illiteracy, which he considered barriers to world peace. His influence spread to presidents and world leaders, as well as to the most underdeveloped countries of the world. So what changed? What changed in that year in 1930 for Frank Laubach? In Frank Laubach's own words in 1930, as he wrote in a journal the thing he called an experiment, he writes, 2 years ago, a profound dissatisfaction led me to begin trying to line up my actions with the will of God about every half hour. People told me this was impossible. And I judged from what I heard that few people are trying even that. But this year I have started out to live all my waking moments in conscious listening to the inner voice, asking without ceasing, "What, Father, do you desire this minute? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say?" And it is clear that this is exactly what Jesus was doing all day, every day. So at the heart of this sermon is a simple idea, which I'm going to talk about, and then a simple practice, the experiment, which I hope we can do together as a congregation. So here's the simple idea. We were created to live our lives in deep, personal, honest, moment-by-moment, interactive connection with God and with responsiveness to God. Okay? Deep connection in response to God. And this is what the Apostle Paul is talking about in Galatians 5, starting in verse 16. So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you do not do what you want to do. So let's look quickly at verse 16. Walk by the Spirit. For Paul, everything begins here with this phrase, and it affects everything else that we do in our Christian life. Everything else we experience, it all begins with this. To walk by the Spirit is the most fundamental, basic practice in Christian life. And this is the idea. God's power and presence is everywhere. It fills this room, your home, the car, your office, the coffee shop. It's like air, it's everywhere. It's as if there's this steady flow coming from God of life, power, grace, guidance, all from our Heavenly Father all the time towards us. And we can either live our days in that flow with that power, that grace, that guidance, or we don't. We can be connected to it. We can be empowered by it and propelled by it. All of this stuff is coming our way, or we can live detached from it, disconnected, unaware, not empowered, lifeless. And St. Paul says, walk around, live by the Spirit. And then we've got a better chance to win this battle here on earth. In verse 17, for the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you do not do what you want to do. Has anyone here ever overeaten? You ever eat so much you just feel so awful, painful? I mean, you can't breathe, you can't walk. You want to raise your hands, or is it just me? You know, it happens to me at least 3 times a day. And sometimes when you're getting to the state and you just know it, you try everything to stop, right? You even try verbally talking to yourself. Okay, I shouldn't do this. not another bite. It's really gonna hurt. I really shouldn't order dessert or another dessert. Just one more glass of wine. No, I'm not gonna do it. And it's like you're powerless, even though your mind and body are screaming, stop. And St. Paul is saying, when you're not walking in the Spirit, this is what it's like every day. All right? Our mind and our body knows to stop. You're powerless overeating what the world and the flesh are offering. And the solution to this conflict, the resolution to this battle is remarkably simple. And it is not trying harder. It's not memorizing more rules, not more self-control. Actually, the answer is a life connected every moment with the Spirit. And St. Paul has a long list in Galatians 5:19 about those who live by the flesh. You can read that later if you'd like. And Paul is saying that these people who live by the flesh, it's like a state of living. The Greek word that he uses there is the practice of a profession, like a lawyer, that this is what they practice every day. It consumes them. And St. Paul is saying that these sins of the flesh can be very destructive if we don't pay attention and transform them by God's help. And then we come to verse 22, where there's another way to live. But the fruit of the Spirit is, and just think about this for each of you, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Okay, quick show of hands. How many of you ever wished you had more patience? Yeah. Have you ever spent sleepless nights, ever been really anxious and make people anxious around you? Ever wish you had more peace? Has anyone ever wished for greater inner capacity for kindness? Who wouldn't love to have self-control? Like when we eat. And maybe like me, you've glanced over this list of the fruit of the Spirit many times, and you've never really given it much thought. But can you imagine a you that had all of these attributes in full, actually working themselves out in your life? What kind of life you'd actually have? Would you even recognize it from the life you have now? And where does all of this come from? Is it from trying harder? St. Paul says no, it comes from the Spirit. Specifically, a life connected with the Spirit, empowered and lived in the Spirit. So there are three ways to do this. In the simplicity of the fruitful life, I'll call it. One, stay connected. On the last night of Jesus' life, he gave an illustration from John 15. And he and the disciples, they just had the Last Supper. They're walking out of Jerusalem, passing through the Kidron Valley, through different grape vineyards. And he wants them to get this. And maybe he grabbed a branch that was shooting off of a vine. In John 15, 1-8, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. And maybe he just picked one up right there just to show them. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. So Jesus says, that's it. That's the whole thing. And he makes it simple. Stay connected to the vine. Now, maybe all of you grew up in Joburg or were around here. We're not on farms, we're not on vineyards, so we're really going to have to stretch our brain muscles a little bit. But how hard is it for the branch to stay connected to the vine? Is it really, really hard or not so hard? I'll give you the answer. It's not so hard, okay? How hard does a branch have to work to produce fruit? Really hard? Not so hard. All it has to do is stay connected to the vine, and actually all the work gets done for it. All of the nutrients, the life, comes from the vine to produce the fruit. And how many things does a vine have to do? Just one thing: stay connected. If you stay connected, fruit will happen. Jesus implies all the fruit comes from the simple act of staying connected. Fruit happens. I think we should get a t-shirt at St. Martin's. Fruit happens. And then maybe on the back, only if you stay connected. But if you're disconnected, everything changes. Being fruitful isn't just harder, it's impossible. All right? If you're disconnected, nothing grows. It's a branch on the ground. It is dead. Trying harder won't matter. Praying for more patience won't matter. Going to another Bible study won't matter. Learning more about the Bible won't matter. Trust me, there are lots of fruitless people that know tons about the Bible. Following the rules, better? No, won't matter. If you're disconnected from the vine, a branch loses its life. That's what happens. It withers. You throw it away. And like Paul, Jesus is saying that the secret to your life is simple: stay connected. And secondly, stay responsive. The assumption of the Bible when it comes to spiritual life is that there is this, as I had said earlier, a steady flow of life, power, love, guidance, sustenance from God. It's always coming our way. And then you can imagine, if we're connected to the vine, there's the branch, and then there's fruit. So my job is to stay in the flow, to respond to that life, power, love, guidance. So Paul concludes his words about spirit and truth. Galatians 5:24 and 25. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. And what St. Paul is saying, the Spirit will guide you. Keep in step with that guidance. And he talked about it all the time: walking in the Spirit, praying in the Spirit, living by the Spirit, having a mind that is the same thoughts of the Spirit, connected and responsive to God. And the last thing, the third thing, is in this moment. The truth for many of us is that we live everywhere but this moment. Sometimes we are so preoccupied with the future, a moment that hasn't come, a bridge we haven't crossed yet, that we are not fully aware of this moment and what this moment should be. You miss what God is doing in this moment. And maybe you're like me, and sometimes, a lot of times, we're stuck with a moment in the past. Something that's filled with regret or pain or resentment or shame, whatever it might be. And that moment becomes a prison that keeps us from living. But moment by moment, connectedness is always about this moment. This bit of time and space. This present tense. Now. Only the moment in front of you is the opportunity to connect with God. Not what's past and can't be undone, or future and isn't yet done. It's right now. And we need to always ask the question, what is this moment? This one. Because I only get one. What is it for? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be learning? Who am I with? What do they need? What does the situation need from me? And it can be incredibly strong and focusing and free. A few years back, I remember a morning I was part of a panel of 5 pastors who were giving an oral exam to 2 Pentecostal pastors about to be ordained. And it took about 4 hours. It was in a cold room. I was cold, and after 2 hours, I started thinking, why did I agree to do this? Thinking I hadn't written my sermon for Sunday, thinking of people out there enjoying their Saturdays in the sun, thinking of lunch that I had missed, what was I having for dinner, thinking, I could have slept in. I think you get the picture. But God was gracious and brought me back to the moment and brought me in. I saw the nervousness of those being examined, coupled with their excitement at finally being on the cusp of ordained ministry. And I settled in and concentrated on the moment and the privilege God gave me for that moment. It was a real joy. So how do we do it? Okay? So again, the 3 things we've just gone over: stay connected, stay responsive, and in this moment. And we actually want to try and do it, all right? So I'm going to give you a challenge. We want to try and practice it. So I gave you the simple idea, and then we're going to do this simple practice, hopefully. It's called the 60-60 experiment. I don't know if you've heard of it. The 60-60 experiment is all about constant connection to God. For the next 60 days, try to keep yourself connected to God. Try to stay in continuous, honest conversation with God, willing to do what comes next, moment by moment. It's simple, but not easy, because we have a long-standing habit of ignoring God much of our day. So we're going to need a lot of help. We're going to need to have something that interrupts our habit of blocking God out. So here's what I'm suggesting, if you take this experiment with us. You get a watch, or maybe your cell phone does it, or your iPad or tablet, something that you can get to beep or chime or make a noise, vibrate, and set it to go off every 60 minutes through your day. Every 60 minutes for the next 60 days. Once every hour for 60 days. 60-60. I'm not sure how to make this work on your cell phone or watch or whatever. Just ask your kids. Maybe you can program it into your computer or whatever. There's a reminder for meetings, I think. And if you have a reminder, then just put God, all right? That's your appointment. Your appointment is God every hour. And maybe some of you are just not good with technology. I have an old school option for you. Use Post-its, right? Those little sticky notes, those little things, pieces of paper with 60-60, and put them everywhere that might interrupt you. Computer screen, bedside alarm clock, rear view mirror, liquor cabinet, medicine cabinet, gun cabinet, TV, refrigerator, whatever it might be. And the idea is that all day long, throughout your day, you are reminded of God and really interrupted by God. And then, when your watch or your cell phone beeps, you do a few things. 1, be aware of God's presence. You just acknowledge that He's right there with you and that you want to be with Him, connected. You might even do a quick assessment. How connected was I over the past hour? Number 2, turn this moment Godward. Take whatever's going on in your day and turn it Godward. Are you anxious, afraid, angry, tired, in the middle of a meeting, heading to class, a conversation, making a sale, doing your job, cleaning dishes, watching TV? Turn your everyday life toward God. You have a conversation with God about just the thing you're doing, even if it's the most mundane thing. Number 3, ask God to guide you in this moment. Ask Him if there's anything He wants you to do, anything you want to say to someone, any person you want to engage with, anything you want to learn. Isaiah 30:21 says, "Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, 'This is the way, walk ye in it.'" So maybe here are some examples. Maybe you're at work in a conversation with your boss and your watch goes off and you turn that conversation Godward. God, what do you want me to hear in this conversation? I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with your boss and you say, God, okay, I need you to tell me what he's actually saying, okay? What do I need to take away from this to make my job better? How do I become a better employee? How do I relate to my colleagues? Is there anything you want me to say? What do you want me to do? Maybe you're beginning your morning and the beeper goes off. You become aware of how anxious you're feeling for the day, stressing about all that you've got to do or you don't want to do. And you breathe deep and you remind yourself that God is right there. God, what do you want me to do today? I know it's not too much to do for me. I surrender this anxious mess to you. Show me how to do it. Show me the parts that you want me to do, the parts you never intended me to pick up, the things you want me to do. Jesus, I want to do this day with you. I have a sign over my desk in my home office. It says, "Good morning, this is God. I will be handling all your problems today. I will not need your help, so have a good day." Maybe your watch goes off when you're talking to someone on the phone or spending time with one of your kids. And just take that moment and begin to pray for that person, for God's best for them, for God's blessing on them. Maybe your watch goes off and your immediate sense is that you're not, or you're in the middle of a way of thinking or doing that's just wrong. And you know, this is not what God intended for me to be doing at this time. And you'd really rather he wasn't in the middle there with you. And the temptation is just to hide, to move away from God. But is that even possible? It's not. So instead, you take even your failures and turn them Godward. What am I doing here, God? This is not where you want me to be. Thank you that because of Christ, you forgave me for this too. Please come and help me. Help me know how to get out of this. Tell me what my next step is. I want to be connected to you. So every 60 minutes, your mind, your day, turns back towards God until you find that your mind turns back towards God even when your phone or watch doesn't go off and you've got an internal clock going and you get promptings to say or do things even when you aren't asking for it, and you become like a branch fully connected to the life-giving vine, and the fruit you never expected begins to be a description of your very life. So, are you willing? Are you willing to give it a try? To experiment with this for 60 days? I dare you. I don't know if in South Africa there's a really, really strong dare. In the United States, we'd say, I double dare you. I hope you'll join the St. Martin's 60-60 experiment. Try it. And don't worry if you fail a lot in the beginning. It's bound to happen. But I just say, feel that it will make such a difference in your life. It's like if you invited God to spend the day with you everywhere you went for the next 2 months, living your life fully connected to God. He's there for you. Amen.